Eric, thank you for joining us today. For those of you who do not know, Eric has been around since 2004 brokering online businesses. It is one of the most sought after online business brokers in the world. So Eric, thank you very much for joining us today. We're all really looking forward to hearing everything you have to talk about.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right. So the floor is yours. We'll go 20 minutes
Cool.
here, Eric, and then we'll do 10 minutes for questions and then move into our usual breakout rooms.
Yeah, sounds good. I don't know if I can like share my screen
Oh, do I need to give
or
you permissions? One second.
you let me I
Oh,
might be
you
able
should
to.
be. Yeah, you should have access.
Okay, cool. And I can provide some notes on this stuff to you after we're done here. So
Awesome.
cool. I don't know if that's showing up decently well or not, but
Looks great.
Perfect.
okay, all right, cool. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so thanks for having me on, Nick. Like you said, I've been brokering the sale of internet businesses for about 18 years now, and then mobile apps also the last 16 years. So a guy named Chad Moretta got us into to doing mobile app deals. So it's kind of funny. He had approached me and had an app that was doing like 20 grand a month. And back then the app store was like, I don't know, maybe a year old or something. I was like, nah, nobody wants to buy anything. Like, it's only a year old. And then his app went from like 20 grand a month to 40 grand a month to 90 grand a month in like 3 months. So it's like maybe there's something to these apps. So we listed that one for him. Took a little while to find a buyer because apps are so new, but got that deal done and sold a few more companies for him, and then been doing app deals ever since. And it's our most primary focus right now with our business. So uh, we love helping people sell their business because it can dramatically change your life and take you in a whole much bigger direction, whether it's for business or personal stuff. So and then with this call here, I'll go through like a few things, and then we can go through Q&A and dig in any more details afterwards. But I find with talking with most of our seller clients, kind of like after they exit, one of the big things that the ones that get the most value out of it is that all the way along, without realizing it or not, they had a mindset where they were building an asset, not lots of times when we first start out, cash flow is obviously crucial and important, but if you can have the mindset where you're actually building an asset and then where you can make investments and towards your time to resource to maximize that asset, can get you through the ups and downs that are inevitable with being an entrepreneur. So that's pretty important. And then another thing is knowing what your future plans might be. So it's that is useful in terms of with depending on the size of the deal that you're exiting for. Lots of buyers last for a non-compete, at least in the niche that you're selling the app in, if not a little broader. So if you know what you want to do next, then you can tailor that to where it allows you to do whatever you want to do for your future endeavors. And then we've had some clients too where if you build a business for years on end and your kind of identity gets tied up in being the owner of that business, and if you don't know what you're going to do next when you exit, you're left a little bit with like, having a little bit of a hole in your life of like, okay, who am I now that I sold this business? And for some people, can almost become depressing and kind of sounds strange. But I've had clients where, they made millions of dollars, and then a few months later, they're like slightly depressed because that was a key part of their life. So if you know what you're going to do next, then you can avoid that. And then other part is like it takes some time to prep along the way, but it's like it's totally worth the investment where it can make you an extra. It could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to sometimes even millions of dollars. Let's see what else. And I'll go through a few of the common things that we see in terms of when you go to sell for maximum value. And the main one is having accurate financials. For some apps, if they're smaller, it's really basic. You don't need anything detailed, just a basic profit and loss statement, and then track that along the way as you go. And that way you don't have to go and build it out when you do go to sell. And then also too, if you can set it up ideally where if you know down the road you're going to want to sell, then if you can set it up where you have like a company entity that's dedicated to it, and also bank accounts and tax returns, that are all clean and accurate and tied to that app, then it can open things up where nowadays buyers can get bank financing if the right things are in place, but you definitely need tax returns and clean financials to be able to pull that off. And benefit for you on that is that when you sell, you get more offers, you get higher valuations, and end up selling for a better price. So, and then another thing that's important is ideally selling when the app is still growing. If it's on a slight decline, that's fine. If it's flat, it's fine. The things that will get you way lower valuation, or if you're selling where we have some clients where they'll be working on one app and then have a much bigger idea, and they let the first thing kind of sit there and die on the vine a little bit, and then try to sell it, and it can still be sellable. You just get way lower valuations because even smart buyers don't want to catch a falling knife. So. And then another thing is reviews and ratings. We have some clients where they focus a lot on that. If you build a good product, some of it will come naturally, but that's become more and more important for buyers where they look at that and focus on reviews and ratings. And then ideally, if it's set things up where if you need to, you can sell the whole developer account to a buyer. So in the early days of doing these app deals, you had to do it that way. Like you had to sell the whole company entity and developer account. Now, obviously, you can sell single apps. But if you do set it up in a way where if need be, if the buyer for some reason needs to acquire the whole developer account, then if you set that up where it's possible, then it helps you get a deal done there. Same thing with like ad network accounts or other services and accounts. Some you can transfer a new owner, other ones you can't. But the more you can make it where when you sell, if you can just hand everything to the buyer, that's the ideal scenario. And what else? Nowadays, one other thing that buyers are focusing on are analytics and KPIs. So when we first started out, buyers didn't focus too much on that. It was really just the financials. But nowadays, they're digging into what's the churn look like, what the retention numbers look like, what's the user base look like over time, and things like that. And then another thing that buyers are looking for these days are heavily more organic traffic. Paid user acquisition paid UA is still great, but if it's more organic traffic, buyers are valuing that a bit higher these days. And then another thing that can help you sell is if, along the way, inevitably you'll have ideas on what you can do to grow the app. You may not implement them, but if you at least keep a list of those and you're able to provide them to a new owner, that can help. So especially we have some buyers now where it might be an individual that they've done well in another industry, but they're new to apps. They may not know how to grow it, but you do. So, and then sometimes too, if you can have a basic forecast of what it looks like, that can help as well. Some scenarios, if you can do anything to make the app more defensible, like with trademarks, patents can be a reach with some apps, but we've seen a few where people have been able to get that in place. Even if it's not like a key thing for like the whole tech, if it's some piece that just makes them more defensible, then buyers are valuing that more and more. And then the more you can systemize or outsource things to where you're not the key reliant piece for running the whole app or the business, then that will help you get better value also. And then if you do have a team, if you have some like standard operating procedures and internal training stuff, that helps out as well. And then we've had some scenarios, gladly not a ton, but some where there's past issues, whether it's with Apple issues or copyright infringements. Sometimes it's not intentional, but happens. If you can clean those up before selling, great. Or at least be able to explain them away, then it's important. And then another one is to have just a valid and truthful, honest for the reason that you're selling. So buyers can pick up on that. So if you're trying to play games with people, then they'll be less likely to move forward. So if you're just clear and honest on why you're selling, then that can help get the deal done. So, and then I won't go into all these things. This is just kind of the process that we normally go through for when we go and work with a client and go to market, where we'll start off with gathering up key information on the app or the business, do some valuation numbers to make sure we can get you a price that you're going to be happy with. That's important for us and for you, obviously. And then if there are any gaps on that, we can usually advise on things that get in place to hit your valuation targets. and then we go build out a marketing package, list it. We handle all the heavy lifting stuff in terms of sorting through buyers and answering basic questions, and work with you by email to get down to where ideally we get offers coming in, and you can pick the best ones from that. And then we negotiate all the key deal terms, and then have a buyer do a LOI or term sheet, depending on the deal size, just to lay out the deal terms and any due diligence requirements they have. And one thing I love about apps, it's like the most simple due diligence process I've seen for anything in my business career, where you can give them platform access. If there's key services, like Revenue Cat or things like that, you can give them access to those, so that they can review information directly. And that's normally a bulk of the due diligence. So apps are way more simple than anything else I've seen. And then negotiate final deal terms, do a purchase agreement and the contract stuff. Some deals we use escrow, some buyers will pay the sellers directly. But either way, then it goes on to the closing day. That's a fun day where you get paid. We all get to celebrate, and then on to transition and training with the buyer. So, and then let me see another thing important along the way to exit for the best price possible. Just approach it from the mentality of, as if you were the buyer, and making sure that they get their questions answered, and kind of put yourself in their shoes, where ultimately they're looking to get a good ROI, and they want to make sure that they're comfortable that they can do that. And then anything you can do in terms of inspiring confidence. Sometimes we'll have clients hop on calls with buyers just to answer some questions, and those definitely help in terms of building a relationship and getting a deal done. And then the other part is to be patient, and if you are working with an advisor, to rely on them. Inevitably, especially for larger deals, there's some ups and downs in the process where things can be a little bit of a roller coaster sometimes, no matter how well prepared we are, where humans are humans, and dealing with decision makers, and sometimes millions of dollars. So there's some ups and downs where it just takes a little patience to see things through. We're a buffer for that, where we'll handle a lot of the that emotional aspect and negotiating these things that need to go on. But let me see what else. These are just some more advanced things that we've seen some buyers these days asking for this kind of stuff, where if you can build a brand with the app, that's great. Some things don't justify that, but the more you can do that, the more value it adds. And we've had more and more buyers asking for email lists. Same thing there. Some of these things applicable to some apps or niches, not so much other ones, but and then building out social media channels, that helps as well. Like I said before, if there's anything patentable, or at least something you can trademark, whether it's the app name or the brand name, that helps as well. And then these days, we just, like I just talked with a buyer earlier that's got a $50 million to spend. They're looking for specifically B2B apps, and some apps justify that kind of model, other ones don't. And if you are doing B2B apps, definitely have contracts with any large customers. Seen some people doing some unique distribution things. Obviously, the App Store distribution stuff is the key. We've seen some where I just talked with a guy the other day. They had a fishing app internationally that did really, really well, and they got picked up where a retail store promoted their app inside all their stores and drove a ton of users and revenue through it. So sometimes you can get unique things like that in place. Let me see. These are some current market trends we've been seeing. The app market's grown up a lot from when we first started, for sure, where there's way more sophisticated buyers now. Great thing is some of those buyers have pretty big pools of investor funds, or they have debt-based financing they can rely upon. And like I said, that's one of the reasons that having clean financials becomes important. And also to keeping your app on a at least consistent revenue trend before selling, if not growth. Some of the debt-based financing that people use, if there's like 10-20% decline year over year, they literally won't finance the deal and can't do it. So, and then another thing, buyers are looking more and more for high quality products. Obviously, if it's subscription based, leads to better retention. Just overall, when we first started, there was some definitely some very low, I would say, low quality apps out there that might do well with downloads and revenue, but aren't very sellable. So I see recently we've had some people approaching us with app ideas, and I know you're doing some work inside the group here to help people get things funded. I would say if you have an idea, like pursue it yourself, get funding, build it out, at least get it up and going for 6 to 12 months before you try to sell it. Like ideas themselves aren't very sellable on their own. And then overall, although the market's been down a little bit more this year compared to the previous year, we're still getting multiple deals done. multiples have come down a little bit from last year, but still getting some good deals done. And then biggest sustained trend I've seen are subscription apps. Almost all the deals we've been doing have been subscription focused, and buyers love that. Some of the bigger buyers that are now, like maybe they used to buy SaaS businesses that are now looking at apps, they'll only do subscription based apps. So let me see, get that's and then some of the big questions that we get are what's my app business worth? And we're always happy to run valuation numbers for prospective clients, give you a good range of like where you're at right now, if you were to sell, what it would look like in terms of valuation and likely deal structure. Compare that to what your exit goal might be and see if there's any gap there. And if there is, what pieces need to be in place to help you hit your goal there. Uh, Generally, multiples we've been seeing lately have been in the range of like 2 to 3.5 times EBITDA for most apps, and then there's always bargain shoppers, especially nowadays, with the current economy and stuff, where they're looking to buy stuff like 1 to 2 times, which can be fine if that's what you're looking for. We prefer to get maximize value with people, but and then in terms of the types of apps that are best to create, we've had a bunch of demand recently for anything in the health, fitness, wellness type of space, financial focused apps, and more casual games like Sudoku and things like that. And then recently some demand for AI based apps. And I would say they're probably best to like innovate a bit. We've had some apps where they're kind of like, just skins or whatever, not necessarily adding a lot of value. So if you can do an AI app that actually adds value, they're likely will be a good buyer for it. So yeah, that's just real quick overview on all that stuff. So when as fast as I could, but happy to jump into some more detail and cover anything else you want to there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. I actually had a quick question before we dive into everyone else's questions. This is about how people come to you with an idea, attempting to sell the idea before the app is even like up and running. Is this before it's even developed, or is it already developed and they just haven't acquired any users yet?
Both scenarios. Yeah, some people have hit us up just with like really just an idea in general and
Wow.
want to be able to sell it. Other people, they maybe started building a product but don't even necessarily have like an MVP ready to go. Where like, those are those are pretty tough to sell. So
Assuming it has to be a pretty darn good idea.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's gotta be. It's gotta be. Well, awesome. All right. Who else has questions? We got around 10 minutes here.
I got a quick question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Eric, that was a great presentation. Loved it. I had a question around just like kind of if you could give us some insights on like what your clients are like, and so we can get an idea of like like what they're looking for and like how do they come to you? Because it'd be interesting to understand like their motivations to be able to better understand like how to build things that they would want to buy, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The buyer side usually breaks down into a few different buckets. We have some buyers where like they're larger public companies. They're usually buying stuff for like user base, or back a couple years ago, got one done for was like this augmented reality mapping app technology that was like a multiple way off the charts, like 25 times revenue, where they wanted the tech behind it. Lots of
Cool.
times it's
Yep.
that's what they're looking for, some kind of tech that they can leverage. Like the company that bought it turned into something where they're selling it now to corporate clients and uses beyond that. So they're more strategic buyers. And then next bucket that falls into is like there's some, I would call them app aggregators out there now. You probably heard of some of them, but there's some that aren't totally public where they've developed or put together investor funds, and they're usually buying partly for like the user base, but also for the cash flow. So they're with their strategy being doing multiple acquisitions, they need to show a good ROI to their investors. So for them, the financials are key, and them being able to see a clear path of how they can better monetize it in some way. So whether it's reducing costs or just coming up with different monetization techniques. So for them, if you have insights on monetization things you've not done, but maybe a larger company could if they have the resources, then that's kind of important there. And then The other bucket that most of our buyers fall into are just individuals. And recently we've gotten a few deals done, and we're just individual buyers. They're usually people who've had success in some other industry before, and they have some cash on hand. And their attraction to the app business is the lifestyle business perspective, where it's something
Yep.
that it's one of the few businesses that legitimately, depending on the size of it, owner can work on it a few hours a week and still generate some pretty good cash flow. So for them, financials are important, and then you being open to doing some training and transition work with them is usually important also. So they usually think they need more handholding than they do, but at least being open to offering that is key for sure. So,
Yeah, that makes total sense. That's super interesting. Thank you.
yeah.
All right, who's next? Who's got a question for Eric?
Hey, Eric, what's what's the longest length that these companies stay on your platform? Is there a certain diminishing return where if they're on for 8 months, like a house, that investors might look at it and be like, well, no one's picking it up, so it's not worth it?
Yeah, to some degree. Doesn't happen too often with us. Usually, if it happens, it's where we've done some things where, usually for past app store clients, where we've kind of pushed the valuation range very high and gone after strategic buyers. And if a strategic buyer is there, can definitely get a higher multiple sometimes. If they're not, then you definitely have to ratchet down the seller expectations, or else it will languish there. It'll just kind of sit there. So we like to go to markets with stuff where it's relatively same valuation, and when we're confident we can find a buyer for it in some reasonable time frame. I think our record is 8 days in getting a deal, like talking with someone and getting a deal closed and money in their bank account.
Yeah,
Usually
well,
takes like 2 to 4 months, that kind of time frame, just based on
okay.
the speed that most buyers move at. But yeah, if it sits there for like 6, 9, 12 months, then yeah, some buyers or investors will look at it and go like, oh, maybe there's something here I'm missing because no one else has wanted to buy it. So
Okay. Thanks.
Hey Eric, great presentation. That was awesome. The question I have is how often, like, is it an often situation where the people that are selling their product are required to stay on for, like, let's say 3 months, 6 months, or provide some sort of value to, like, kind of contribute post sale to facilitate the kind of growth of the product post sale? Is that a thing, or is that not something that's normal?
Not a lot with app businesses. Some of the other businesses we do, where it's like if it was like a SaaS business, or if there's a larger team, some buyers will ask for that, just because there's always their kind of back of my concern that once the owner leaves, some of the key employees might leave to you. But for the scenarios where it's like smaller team, and you've put things in place for systems and stuff, lots of it happens inside of a month. Like a lot of our deals, all the training's done in 2 to 4 weeks, usually bulk of it in 2 weeks. And yeah, once in a while that can happen. Like I said, usually it's larger deals where they kind of want the owner to stick around in part-time capacity, largely just to be able to pick your brain or have you advise on stuff in case they hit some bumps in the road.
Eric, one question. I think you mentioned the multiplying factor was about 2 to 3 times on average. Was that right?
Yeah, these days right now in the market, I'd say 2 to 3.5 times EBITDA. If it's got 3+ years of history, there's some buyers that'll pay more like 4 or 5 times EBITDA kind of numbers. And then if it's something in decline, those are the ones where buyers usually come back and offer more like 1 to under 2 times for it. But and then sometimes to ad-based type revenue ones get a slightly lower multiple unless it's really, really consistent. So
How many people here are building or are building to sell eventually? Show of hands. Maybe. Yeah. Not really sure. We'll see. Interesting. Gotcha. I was just curious. All right. Who else has questions for Eric?
I would say too, even if you're not building to sell, if you put things in place like as if you were going to sell it, then you always leave that door open, where if something changes in your life, where some life event happens and you want to cash out, then you can way more quickly do it than if you don't have the right things in place. And worst case, you build a much better business that maybe you won't even want to sell it. So
Sharon, all you.
Hey, I'm just actually modifying my Delaware C corporation, and I'm right here at the spot where we can choose about acceleration options when we give our shares. So we can go a percentage of acceleration, we can have a double or single trigger. Do you have any thoughts or ideas about how I would look to future buyers if I add acceleration to the founders and the CTO?
that's a good question. I'm not sure on that one.
Okay,
I would probably rely more on like if you have a tax accountant person.
gotcha.
On the buyer side, as long as they're not acquiring any like any debt or anything like that, they
Right.
probably won't care on the buyer side. So whatever's best for you financially or tax wise on that.
Thanks.
All right, guys, we got a few more minutes here. Anyone else before we go to breakouts?
Maybe one more. Yeah, I was just wondering, do you sometimes have deals where the agreement is not only a buyout price, but the seller remains on board and gets percentages?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sometimes and it's what you're open to. So we can always frame things with buyers if you're open to retaining some equity or staying on and advising. We've had some where the seller client stayed on and advised not just on this current app, but the buyer ended up like acquiring other apps. Seller advised them on that on a consulting basis, like revenue sharing kind of thing. And then same thing with equity that can work out well, especially if it's a scenario where you have ideas or things you could advise on longer term. Then yeah, it can definitely help out. Once in a while too can help out like if a buyer's trying to use SBA financing on a deal, if the seller's willing to either do seller financing or retain equity, can help them get the deal done with SBA. So
And are paid apps typically of more interest for your clients looking to convert to subscription? So trying to find a paid app going quite well and with the idea to convert to subscription.
yes, definitely. Yeah, we have some past app seller clients who after they exited now they're coming back into the market and buying stuff. And that's exactly what they're looking for. Things where it's it's at least proven out in the market, and then they can go in and they'll go through and do some crazy A/B split testing stuff on different subscription options amongst other things. But yeah, they heavily focus on those. So definitely.
All right, guys. Last chance. Any other questions for Eric? All right. Well, Eric, where can everyone connect with you?
Oh yeah, they can reach out to me at just appbusinessbrokers.com and happy to provide any free consultation on like where you're at now versus where you want to be, things that might be in place. And we've talked with some people even a year in advance of when they're looking to sell. We just did a fitness app deal a while back where I talked with them, I think it was like 18 months before they wanted to exit, where they were doing about 200 grand a year. They really wanted to sell for 4 million or more. So looked at the factors they needed in place. They did an amazing job of executing and then came back and they were doing about, I think it was like 1 million to 1.1 million kind of year run rate and got a deal done for them for 4.5 million. So yeah, happy to advise on that stuff, even if you're not looking to exit right away. So
Awesome. Eric, definitely feel free to throw that in the community so we can make sure anyone who couldn't make it today can also take advantage of that. That's awesome.
cool, sounds good. I have some notes too, can put in there. I was going to talk to you. Got some like I've been putting together a list of like all our buyer demand for different kind of like app niches that other people are looking for. So can toss that in there too. That would be helpful.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. This was extremely helpful. I definitely learned a lot. I think everyone else could say the same. So thanks again for joining. And guys, we're going to go into the roundtable discussions now. So for any new faces here, basically how this works, we'll go into 2 15-minute breakout rooms where you'll be able to share information about your app, any recent wins, any challenges that are currently going on in your business, and then feel free to offer insights and feedback to everyone else in the discussion. Any questions on that? Boom. All right, Eric, feel free to stick around or you can hop off.